there is a kind of discomfort that doesn't go away. Not because something is wrong, because something is real. This is the uncarved. Most people spend their lives trying to get comfortable. Not comfortable in the physical sense, though that too. Comfortable in the deeper sense. Stable, resolved, safe from uncertainty. On the other side of the thing that is pressing on them right now. And there is nothing wrong with that impulse. It is ancient. It is human. It is the nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do, scanning for the exit, looking for the moment when the pressure lifts and it can finally rest. But here is what nobody tells you about that exit. For most people, in most seasons of a real life, it doesn't come. Not because the situation is hopeless, because life is not structured around your comfort. The debt doesn't resolve on your schedule. The uncertainty in the relationship doesn't clarify itself when you need it to. The business, the health, the question that has no clean answer. These things move at their own pace, in their own time, indifferent to your readiness. And so the question, the real question, is not how to get comfortable. It is how to live while you're not. There is a distinction worth sitting with here. The distinction between discomfort as signal and discomfort as sentence. Discomfort as signal says, something is here that needs attention. Something is unresolved. Something is at stake. Pay attention. That kind of discomfort is information. It is the body's intelligence doing its job. Discomfort as sentence says something different. It says, this should not be. This feeling is evidence that something is fundamentally wrong with the situation, with you, with the choice that brought you here. And most people, without realizing they've made the switch, move from the first to the second the moment the discomfort doesn't resolve quickly. The signal becomes a verdict. The feeling becomes a flaw. The pressure becomes proof that you are doing something wrong, or that you are someone who can't handle this, or that the whole direction was a mistake. And once you are living inside that verdict, you are no longer in the fire. You are in a story about the fire, which is a harder place to breathe. Epictetus was born a slave. Not as metaphor, not as a teaching story. He was owned. He was, at one point, tortured by a master, testing the limits of his endurance. And what he built, not despite that, but forged inside it, was one of the most precise philosophies of living under pressure that has ever been written. His central observation was not complicated. He said, there are things within your control and things outside it. Your judgments, your intentions, what you choose to do with this moment. those are yours. Everything else, the outcome, the timeline, what other people do, what the market does, what the month brings, not yours. And he was ruthlessly specific about this, not as resignation, as liberation. Because the moment you stop spending energy trying to control what you cannot control, that energy becomes available for what you actually can. This is not passivity. Epictetus was not passive. He was one of the most deliberate, precise, present human beings who ever lived. Precisely because he had learned to stop fighting the shape of things he could not change, and to put everything he had into the space that was actually his. There is a word that the writer Nassim Taleb coined for a quality he noticed was poorly named in most languages. We have words for things that break under pressure. We have words for things that resist it, that stay the same, that endure. But we have no common word for the thing that gets stronger. He called it antifragile. Not the bone that doesn't break, the bone that, after it heals from a fracture, is denser at the break point than it was before. Not the person who survives difficulty, the person who comes out of it with a capacity they didn't have going in, a judgment that is sharper, a tolerance for uncertainty that is wider, a knowledge of their own limits and their own resources that can only be known by having been tested. You cannot develop antifragility in comfortable conditions. It does not exist in the absence of pressure. It exists because of it. Which means, and this is the part that matters, the pressure you are living under right now is not only a problem to solve, it is also a forge. The first of the Buddha's Four Noble Truths is usually translated as, "Life is suffering." That translation has done a great deal of damage. The word is dukkha. And dukkha doesn't mean suffering in the way we use that word. It is closer to unsatisfactoriness, impermanence, the structural instability of everything that exists. The wheel whose axle is slightly off-center. The friction that is not the exception. It is the nature of the wheel. What the Buddha was pointing to is not that life is painful, though it often is. It is that a certain kind of suffering comes specifically from expecting the wheel to run without friction, from treating the instability as an aberration, from waiting for the discomfort to end as a condition for beginning to live, because it doesn't end. Not in the way we mean when we say that. The form changes. The debt resolves and something else arises. The question answers itself and a new one opens. This is not pessimism. This is the most honest thing anyone has ever said about the structure of a life. And embedded in that honesty is something that changes everything. If discomfort is not the exception, then you don't have to wait for it to end to begin being present. You can be present now, in the middle of it, without the resolution you were waiting for. There is a story in the Zhuangzi, the ancient Taoist text, that has stayed with me longer than most things I have read. A prince watches his cook break down a whole ox, and what he sees stops him completely. The cook moves through the animal not with force, but with understanding. His blade never meets resistance. It finds the spaces, the natural separations, the places where the structure of things already wants to open and moves through them. The prince asks, "How is this possible?" And the cook says, "I have been at this for 19 years. My blade is still like new, because I do not hack, I do not force, I follow what is there." A good cook, he says, changes his blade once a year because he cuts. An ordinary cook changes it every month because he hacks. But I follow the natural lines. I glide through what is already open. I stop at what is not. I work with what is there, not against it. Living inside chronic pressure is not the same as hacking. Hacking is what you do when you cannot accept the shape of things. When every morning starts with a fight against what is already true. When the energy that could move you forward goes instead into resisting the fact that the situation is what it is. The cook doesn't pretend the ox is simple. He has worked with this for 19 years. He knows exactly where the resistance is. He has developed, through long practice, an intimate knowledge of the structure, what gives, what doesn't, where to move, and where to wait. That is what living inside pressure can eventually become. Not the absence of difficulty, a relationship with it that is skilled enough to find the spaces. Someone once said, and I have returned to this more times than I can count, that you should not worry about tomorrow. Not because tomorrow doesn't matter, but because you will face tomorrow with the same tools with which you faced yesterday and are facing today. Think about what that actually means. The version of you that will wake up tomorrow under pressure, that version will have everything that today's version has. Every hard morning you didn't collapse in. Every month you found a way through. Every moment you chose to function instead of freeze. That accumulates. Not as comfort. The pressure doesn't feel lighter just because you've survived it before, but as capacity, as evidence, as the quiet knowledge, not spoken, not performed, just known in the body, that you have been here before and you are still here. The tools you have now were built in the fire, and they will be there tomorrow. Today I'd like to leave you with a question. Not a technique for reducing discomfort. A question to carry. At some point today, in a moment of pressure or in a quiet moment just before it, ask yourself, am I in the discomfort or am I in a story about the discomfort? Because those are different places with very different weather. The discomfort itself, the actual physical present experience, is usually more manageable than the story the mind builds around it. The story adds weight. It adds history. It adds every previous time this felt impossible. It adds every possible version of next month. The discomfort itself only exists right now, and right now you are handling it. You are, in fact, already doing the thing you were afraid you couldn't do. The fire does not ask whether you are ready. It is not personal. It is not punishment. It is not evidence of a wrong turn. It is simply the condition you are in. And inside that condition, not on the other side of it, not once it resolves, but inside it now, there is a version of you that is not waiting for the heat to stop, that has stopped hacking and learned to find the spaces, that holds the question about tomorrow lightly enough to be fully present in today, that knows, not from theory, but from having been here, that the tools it needs are already in its hands. That is not someone who is no longer afraid. That is someone who has learned to be at home in the fire. Until next time, move slowly. That is enough.